I love how this one just doesn't even bother to let me know if it's actually recording. Hola all, if you're actually here, welcome back to Soul Mechanics, finally. I should like to apologize for my appearance and general demeanor, I suppose you could say. I am now at the outset of, well actually we're pretty deep into day 5 of the experiment. And there are various apologies that need to be rendered and whatnot. One, I'm going to apologize to Sita for the lacking of the music. I'm going to apologize to all of you for the lack in the background. These two problems are going to be on account of me having just... I cleaned up everything into spectacular fashion to where everything was right where it should be, and everything was perfect, and then all I needed to do was get the two pieces, put them together to make the background. What I did not do, though, is that. What I did instead was go ahead and trash the fucking place at least 3 to 4 times as bad as it was before. We are now at the point where I'm thinking I probably just have to go ahead and burn it to the fucking ground. B. We no longer have a Wi-Fi signal so that I can play music for the video because my roommate thought it'd be a great idea to sit 2 feet away from the router and watch as it got rained on so badly that it's actually broken. Now, like, that's going to take a while. It's rained a lot here. It rains all the time, and the windows are always open. So, I mean, this dude would have had to sit there and watch this thing get rained on for a very long time without doing anything about it in order for it to just break the way it did. But I can't get in the... There's a lot I want to say here, but I can anticipate it taking way too long, and I have a tendency to trail off in my current condition. I did go to Hobby's Candlelight Vigil. I want to talk about that. There's so much I need to say about that and what transpired on my way home. I should like to note, for anybody that is unaware, the general level of intelligence and I suppose you could say kind of well-informedness of most every Cleveland bus driver is absolutely astounding, and they have the most fascinating conversations, most of them, a lot of them. Some of them are just kind of weird, but a lot of them are exceptionally smart and will, you know, fill you in on things that you did not know about before, which there's a lot I don't know about the way our politics operate, our political system operates and such, that bus drivers have informed me about, which has led me to having several theories blow up in my head, and that's likely because of, again, the condition that I'm in fact in right now, which is what I want to get to, and I'm going to jump right to that. As I said, there's various apologies that need to be rendered, things that need to be explained, especially in respects to damages that I've incurred upon people that I don't think they're even aware of yet, but I have in fact done some pretty heavy damage to certain individuals that is going to gradually become life-altering for them in many ways. I am sorry for that, but it's something I have a tendency to do in this state. If you piss me off, most especially if you think you can try to lie to me, that's really stupid, and I did go ahead and explain that beforehand. Like, I explained to you, it's very dangerous to be just generally stupid and upset me in some way or another, and especially to try and lie to me now. And what you proceeded to do, this particular person, nobody here knows them, is you went ahead and you did just that. I mean, what the fuck could prompt you to think that would be... Never mind, I can't trail off, don't interrupt me. Winky, stop it. Sorry, one of the symptoms, I'm going to speak to the symptoms. First, I wanted to speak to Juanita, who I asked to watch this video. I said that she needs to see this video because it is in fact speaking directly to the nature of what people like to term or think of as being the darkness in the world. And she had a post about darkness and how we need to fight darkness, and she's absolutely correct on that, because darkness is... A lot of people like to think of like angels and demons and like holy knights or what have you, just outrageous ideas as to what the darkness and the light are referring to. What darkness is actually referring to, the value that's placed behind that, the supporting value that is in fact establishing foundation for this concept of there being darkness that is in some way against us is that what is not visible. Again, visibility is key to lucidity. Lucidity is the goal of the game. Being lucid, being aware, being capable of accessing and ultimately accomplishing the most effective and deliberate version of the self, which is a secondary point of this video, if we can manage to get to it in time. I really don't have enough space on the phone right now, and I don't know how to get it back because blah blah, I don't want to get into it. Don't do that. Anyways, it's for Juanita. This is speaking directly to the nature of what value actually does in fact establish the nature of our concept of what darkness is. Again, that what is not visible, which you have, everybody has just like hordes of what we can actually go ahead and refer to as being, for all intents and purposes, fractured identities existing in their personal system. And these personalities, these isolated identities that people have kind of broken into pieces in their psyche, are constantly affecting you. Like they're influencing you in so many different ways just by existing, because for whatever reason it seems they always, and we know this is how the brain works. It's a simple neurophysiology, but for reasons that would be basic to anybody who's familiar with the operation of the brain, these personalities, they're constantly communicating with each other. And it doesn't matter what they're saying, really. They could say any fucking thing at all. It's going to have an effect on your immediate idea of your solid, what you think is a solid personality. It is not by any stretch a consolidated personality. In fact, I don't think anybody's ever really had that. Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and hypothesize that it's not even a conceivable possibility yet. At the very least, nobody has achieved it through fucking meditation or anything of that nature. You're not going to sit on a fucking rock and think about it and make it happen. You're going to have to go to some serious extremes to even become aware of these values in play before, you can actually go about doing anything with it. Like I'm very aware of their existence, and I've got a pretty good grasp on exactly what's happening with them, how they function, how they're influencing me, and even maybe others around me to some extent or another. But I'm still very far away from actually being able to make any sense of it or put it to any solid use. I'm going to figure that out. Of course, it's the point of the experiments, which again, for anybody who is not paying any attention at all, the experiment is what I'm calling extremity deprivation. That is to say, fasting, no food, no water. Pretty much all that I consume is going to be sort of, I don't want to say like drugs, but herbal compilations, alchemical combinations that allow for me to basically continue, because you get to a certain point where these symptoms I'd like to speak to kick in. Firstly, I'll go ahead and speak to the symptoms. I really want to cover that because it's very interesting. The very first symptom that you're going to start to notice, well, the very first kind of clump of symptoms you're going to start to notice, usually I do around day 3. It's got to be at least 2 days, but sometimes it takes 3 days to get to this point, depending on how conditioned your body is to it. It's going to be obviously a difficulty speaking because you're not really using your vocal cords so much for anything. You're not eating, your throat's not getting exercise it requires, so you're going to have a difficulty speaking, but you are also going to begin to notice a difficulty breathing, or at least a kind of a shortness of breath. And I'm going to hypothesize that this is likely because your brain has reached the point, I almost wanted to say my body's in rare form right now. I mean, the things that I can do are exceptionally impressive at this point, and primarily because of some of these symptoms that kick in. But my brain, on the other hand, I would have to theorize that it is now at the point where it actively believes that I am in fact dying, and it's in an extreme panic mode, or a distress and or emergency state, wherein it seems as though it's like it goes into this alert mode wherein it's kind of like, it seems to be desperately seeking through, like it's going through the entirety of my value system and panning over every piece of my identity all throughout my entire history, everything that I've ever experienced. It seems as though it's just kind of like streaming through it all as quickly as is possible in an effort to find some solution to the problem that it seems to believe is occurring. And you can't really communicate directly with the brain to tell it it's not actually a problem. For the most part, it's just going to run off on its own, and it's going to try to figure out, this. It thinks that it's dying. So it's going apeshit trying to find some method by which to fix the problem, which is not actually a problem at all. That's going to be one of the more interesting things that will start to happen, actually, because when you witness this happening, when you actually experience this and you're aware of it happening, it's fascinating how it does happen. But it has some weird side effects of its own, such as I seem to get this idea in my head. I like to think of this as being a very bizarre sort of hallucination in some sense. I tend to get this idea in my head that inanimate objects have a kind of a personality to them. This, of course, is going to be pieces of my personality reflecting off of them, and I'm getting this feedback through the filters in my system that, for all intents and purposes, sort of create the illusion of character occurring in the objects. And it seems as though there are stories being played out. Like, my room has little sectors and shit that are run by different pieces, like the airport's, the travel package suitcases, they run that corner of the room, and it's like their kingdom, and they have rules set up. It's very odd, and this happens as the mind wanders. It's like it's going to be one of those emergency, this is the brain searching for a solution to the emergency problem at hand, and one of those is going to be accessing the full extent of your imaginative properties. So it's kind of like going back to your childhood, really, and like when you used to play with toys and make up stories. Basically, that just starts happening sporadically. At least that's what I'm thinking must be happening, because I know damn well that these objects aren't telling me stories about anything. They certainly aren't doing much of anything other than being in my fucking way all the time. And they're worthless. Not all of them. Most of them are worthless, and I have no fucking idea why I collect these things. I can be such a stupid ass, man. And I know it's happening. And I do it anyways, which makes me even stupider. Anyways, another very cool symptom that I see happening, which again might be one of these, an emergency solution of sorts, is that it seems as though I'm suddenly granted, full access to the extent of my vocabulary, and granted a certain extent of kind of rhetorical aptitude that I do not possess ordinarily. It seems as though I'm very gifted with general verbal negotiations, and that speaks directly to the nature of what I was talking about, having damaged somebody. If you do something stupid, if you do something to deliberately upset me, or you try to lie to me overtly, I am going to respond by pointing out exactly what is flawed about your system in that moment. And even if you don't, most people don't really comprehend what I'm saying to them most of the time, but they're going to. Over the course of maybe the next few days or so, certain things are going to transpire that will cause for this particular person, for instance, to begin to become aware of what I did actually inform him of this last night. And as he becomes aware of that particular, compilation of informations, it's going to cause for certain areas in his psyche to kind of either light up or shut down, depending. This is how spotcasting works. It's basically understanding the processes of the brain, understanding exactly what triggering mechanisms will cause for certain values to either be removed or added to the system, and what effects they're going to have, which I tend to produce very damaging, almost, I dare say, in most cases, going to be life-altering, sort of. I'm sorry to that guy. I am. I'm sorry to everybody who I've responded to in that way. It's like something I can't help. That's another side effect. It's as though I respond to things in an emergency fashion, and I feel as though if you're like almost as though you're kind of threatening me, really, and I need to damage you. God forbid, like this guy, I thought for a moment there, it looked as though he was actually going to resort to physical violence at what point. I mean, you guys know I got jumped by those 3 guys not too long ago, and I know I'm strong enough to handle it, you know, to take it, and I really didn't want to run the risk of one of these guys having like a gun or something, or just exacerbating the situation by fighting back against 3 bigger guys. But if it comes down to like one-on-one combat, I don't care who you might think you are in that regard. If you raise a hand to me, you're the best deal I can offer you is the emergency room, but I can't guarantee that you're actually going to get that deal, is all I'm going to say. Like, don't fucking do that. That's a warning for anybody that might encounter me, especially when I'm in this condition. Please don't ever do that. I do not like to ever hurt people. Sometimes I hurt people with words, but I'm going to go ahead and at least try to convince myself that it's ultimately good for them, and it should be, really. It should be good for them to kind of become more aware of themselves for the most part, but of course this can be very hazardous for some people, especially people who are either deliberately ignoring themselves or have been conditioned to ignore themselves, which again speaks to the nature of darkness. I do personally hypothesize that these aspects of our personality that we're unaware of, I think the only reason that we are not aware of them actively in every passing moment is because we have been conditioned over millennia of evolution, you know, if not even further back, just very sternly conditioned to be ignorant and to be, you know, dismissive where it comes to these things. Probably there's good reasoning for that in some way or another, but at the same time, it is enlightening in ways to become aware of these things. It's going to really depend on your understanding of the world, but there's one particular aspect of your personality that I believe we all share to some extent or another. You know, as I was saying, we make a distinction here in this video between the brain and the body as though they were 2 separate entities. Of course, they are not that. They are obviously 2 parts of the same organism, as is every fucking thing else that exists. All part of one creature, for the moment, as best we can describe it. It's not really material, as we like to think of it as being this physical construct. It is not really that at all. It doesn't even really seem to be that. If you actually look at it, it very obviously is not what we present it as being. It's almost as though we're all like, what's the word? That's the one word I'm gonna have lost. I'm probably find it pretty quickly though. It seems as though we're all coordinating or conspiring in this vast conspiracy to just generally actively lie to each other about what is actually happening here. Because if you actually look at the world and the laws in play and how it operates and generally what's known about how we think it may actually be, you know, constructed for the most part, it is very obviously not an object at all. It never was. And what it seems to be constructed of, more so than anything else, is going to be psyche, which of course is another word for soul. So, I mean, when I'm telling you that the world is your soul, that's like common sense, man. It's basic understanding. Anyways, I'd like to think of there as being this one kind of collective oversoul that we would have to refer to as being God for the most part. That's what we think of as God as being. And I'm going to go ahead and talk, if I can, if I have the time to. I'm going to have to clip this. I'm going to have to move into a second video later on. But I should like to speak to a conversation that I'm going to say I believe I had. Of course, I wouldn't want to claim outright that I believe I've had a sincere, heart-to-heart, kind of long-winded conversation with God itself. and I do mean everybody's God. If anybody who's feeling like, they've lost interest in continuing further along this route with the video, please do check in the second video and at least allot me a measure of time, to go ahead and explain to you exactly what the fuck I am talking about here, because I guarantee you it's likely not what you're thinking. The idea that people have of what God is even really supposed to be, let alone what it actually is, or what he or she or whomever is just so far fucking off from what it actually is. I'll go ahead right now and explain to you what it actually is. God is going to be, for all intents and purposes, the very greatest, most established, most perfected, and just the general greatest potentiality of you. Your God, personally, is going to have to be the perfected version of you, your perfect person. The personality that you have always wished somewhere deep down in the back of your psyche that you would like to ultimately create. It's going to be your ultimate character overall. Now, of course, at some point we are all going to share one. Like, that's going to be the ultimate outcome. But we each do have individual gods that we know of as being our own personal perfected selves. Mine, as I've stated many times, is going to be this feminine character that I kind of have always wished I had been born as, and I'm constantly disturbed, if not actually straight up pissed off that I was denied that. But I mean, that doesn't make me a woman, really. I am obviously a man because I have that choice is mine to make, and I went ahead and made it, because I really didn't think I was afforded the option earlier on, and I kind of missed that opportunity. But that's okay. I'm happy with the person I am. I love him. I'm proud of him. But this feminine persona that I have kind of lurking around in the back of my head, she becomes apparent and during these experiments, and she lives, in a manner of speaking. I can become aware of her presence, and I make an attempt at kind of fusing the two together, because there is points in time throughout my experience where the traits of this personality that's kind of locked away in the back of my mind will come to the surface at random, for the most part, and for all intents and purposes, essentially kind of wreak havoc upon relationships that I have. What people tell me they've heard from this character that pops up from time to time. She seems to be a hell of a lot more intelligent than I am, but really kind of hurtful in ways. Anyways, what I'm trying to do is unite the two. She's been tucked away, locked away, because I wasn't allowed to express her, and so she's pretty much, from what I can tell, she's really kind of angry about that, as she has every right to be. But I got really mad with my general idea of God the other night for various reasons, and I kind of called it out, and it actually responded directly, face to face, in this conversation that I had. I'm going to get to that in the second video, because it's going to take up likely as much time as I've taken up here, which is already too much. So, I'm sorry. I'm really not. I'm in bad shape right now. I'm really beat up. I need to get some form of rest for a minute or two. Likely I'm not going to make it to the 9-day goal here, but we'll see what happens. I'll get back to you as soon as is possible. Thank you for watching this. I hope it was in some way informative. I don't really even know what I was trying to say here. I just wanted to explain what's happening for the most part, and what I believe is coolest and most important about what has happened. But there's a lot I didn't get to put in here because I don't have the time for it. I'll try to get to it later. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I apologize for everything that is wrong with this fucking video and me in general. But I'm very grateful that you do have enough respect to pay some attention to what I'm trying to accomplish here. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you as soon as I can. Fucking Terry Uniciari, Kila Salai, and all that. Namaste. Whatever it is that I say. I can't even remember the last video I made.